Xero has a very simple and intuitive startup guide. You can fill out all of the information in a very small form. It hardly takes even a minute. You can just get started with Xero. Start off by entering the name of your business. So once you have entered the company name, you need to select the correct industry and business type. This is very important, very essential, because Xero will use the industry and business type to not only set up the chart of account, but it will also use it to set up sales and use taxes that you collect from your customers. Select the appropriate industry from the list that is provided by Xero. You can also search for the correct industry type from the list and then make your selection. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to go with professional services. Select the country. Choose whether or not your business has employees. On the basis of this, Xero will set up payroll. Then verify that you are not a robot and then start your free trial or start your access of Xero accounting if you have already purchased a subscription. Business address that you set up in Xero is also going to be very essential because on the basis of the business address, you have already established the physical presence, that is physical nexus with the state that you are operating in. So you need to pay the sales tax in at least that state. So get that information absolutely correct. Here we are on the dashboard of Xero Accounting and we are ready to get started with this tutorial. Has a really good dashboard. You can add other reports and accounts to the dashboard. You can edit the dashboard as often as you want. The best option is to add all of the accounts and reports that you need to regularly review. So these can be accounts like your checking account, business savings account, and then you can have the profit and loss statement, the accounts receivable and the amount that is due from customers and amount due to vendors. So that is some of the things that you would like to add to the dashboard. And on the top left corner, I have the company menu. I can look at all of the organizations and company files I've set up here. I can also go to the services that I have subscribed to apart from Xero Accounting. If you head over to the upper left corner and select the company menu, you can see that you have the option to switch between multiple organizations. So all of the organizations that you set up, you'll have to purchase a new subscription for, and then you can easily switch between them and work between them. I don't know how this is going to be helpful for, let's say, a business owner, but if you are an accountant, then this is going to help you out by enabling you to maintain multiple clients in your company. Then I have the top menu bar, the create new menu, which enables me to quickly create invoices, bills, contacts, and any information that I need to readily record in my company file. With the search menu, I can quickly search through the whole Xero database. All of the data that I have recorded in the company file can be searched through simple queries. Then I have the notification center, which will show me the latest notifications from customers, vendors, and due payments related to them. The help menu gives me all of the resources that I require in order to learn about a particular feature. I can connect apps with Xero such as Square, Stripe, PayPal, and then I have the account center in which I can change the settings or log out of my account. The dashboard of Xero Accounting is simply amazing, highly customizable, gives you the ability to simply click on edit the dashboard and remove any of the cards, accounts, metrics that you don't want to see. You can often create reports and add them to the dashboard by marking the option to display the report or account on the dashboard. So you get a quick overview of your business's finances and dealings without shifting through a whole lot of data and menus. On the top menu bar, you have the business menu. You can look at analytics, sales forms, purchase forms, as well as expenses and checks. In the account menu, you can access all of the reports, bank accounts, the chart of accounts, and manual journal entries. These reports are mainly for business owners and accountants. The projects menu can be very useful for users who are into long-term projects. So if you take up projects and jobs from customers and use progress invoicing, then you can set up projects. Projects will allow you to look at the profitability of each of the projects that you set up in Xero so that you can analyze your data in more detail and more context. Work on those projects that bring in more revenue and profit and work less on projects that bring less revenue and profit. And then finally, you have the contacts menu. If I head over to the business menu and then go to bills to pay, I can view all of the bills that I still need to pay. The one that show a red mark besides them are overdue and you need to pay them as soon as possible. They'll also show up in the accounts payable aging report and we'll look at it later. You have an option to create a new bill from this menu. You have options such as export bills, view bills not assigned to projects, and a host of other options. You can also use the create new menu and select bill to enter a bill quickly. You can select the contact from whom you got the bill, select the date on which you received the bill, enter the due date by using the same command that I taught you earlier. Then in reference number, you can add a purchase order number or a sales order number, whichever is relevant. Then add the description for the item, quantity of the item, the unit price, and select an appropriate account to categorize this transaction. Because I'm purchasing a computer, I'll use the computer equipment account to post this transaction. After verifying all the details, I'll click on approve. If I go back to the bills to pay menu, I get a list of all of the bills in my company file. I can view the status of the bill. From the top menu, I can even select and filter out the bills according to their status. So I can view bills that are still awaiting payment and bills that have been paid in full or partially. I can select the bill and then enter the payment details and mark the bill as paid. When I do that and I update the trial balance, the balance in the checking account will reduce because that is the account that I used to make the payment. And the balance in the accounts payable account will also reduce because I've paid off amount that was due. When I update the journal report, I get the latest transaction and its journal entry. And I can see that at first, Xero actually increased the balance in the accounts payable account and then it later decreased that when we paid off the debt. Let's come to customer management. And the first thing that we are going to look at in this is the invoicing process in Xero. Now, invoicing is not simply sending an invoice and receiving the payment. There are a lot of things that go into it. So for starters, we are first going to create the code. I'll head over to the business menu and then select the codes option to create a new estimate that I can send to my customer or client for approval. Since I don't have any quote or estimate created yet, I'll click on the new quote option. I'll select one of the customer contacts that I've already saved, but I also have the option to create a new contact as a customer or a vendor. I'll select one of the items that I've saved in Xero, and I also have the ability to create a new item at this point, and all of the details that I've saved for each of the items will automatically be entered in the respective field. I have the name of the item, the description, the quantity, the price, as well as the account that the transaction must be posted to. And on the basis of the price and quantity, Xero will automatically calculate the total amount for that particular product. When you update the quantity, the total amount will be updated automatically. You can select one of the provided tax rates or create a new tax rate. This tax rate is the sales tax or the use tax that the customer will be paying. You also have the ability to add a reference number to connect the code to a purchase order or sales order or even to a project. In terms, you can enter the terms of the code if there are specific terms that you want the contract to include. And then you can attach any supporting files or documents through the attach files section. You can then mark the code as sent or just send it to the customer. And if you mark it as sent, then Xero will treat it as sent to the customer, and then you'll have the ability to mark it as accepted and then create an invoice from it. When you send a code to the customer has the option to either accept the terms and conditions of the contract and to accept the pricing and then approve the code, or they have the option to actually reject the code, in which case you will have to reach out to them once again and send new prices or change the terms and conditions if you want to go ahead with that job. Once you have marked the code as sent and accepted by the customer, you can then convert that code into an invoice, and the invoice will contain all of the items or services that the customer purchased along with their prices, and you can send that when you deliver actual benefit to the customer. So once you have delivered the product or you have actually provided the service to the customer, you'll send them the invoice. I'll go back to the business menu and select the quotes option to view all of the quotes available in the company file. And here I can see the quote that I created. I also have the option to create the quote from the create new menu, and then I'll select the quote that I created and then mark it as accepted, which means the customer has accepted the quote, and I can then deliver the items or services and then create an invoice and send that invoice to the customer. You can send the invoice as an email to the customer directly through Xero and even add payment links, which is a very good option if you want to do that. Having a payment link directly on the invoice enables customers to pay you as fast as possible. When I choose the option to create a new invoice, I'll get the option to also mark it as invoiced, in which case it will be automatically recorded as an invoice. But if I don't choose that option, I'll have the ability to edit the information on the invoice and then to send it to the customer. And the good thing is, when adding an invoice, I can also add a logo with the add details menu. I can add online payment options such as credit and debit card payments, PayPal, or even bank payments, and all of the payments. And the customer would then be able to click on the payment link and make the payment accordingly. And that payment will be confirmed by Xero. In the attached files, let's say if the customer is tax exempt or the customer has a resale certificate, then you can upload that here and mark the customer as tax exempt, or you can upload the details of the contract with this customer. Then you can add rest of the details, and finally you have the options to approve and email the invoice. I'll mark the invoice as sent, and when I go back to the journal report, apply the correct filters and update it, I can view the recent transactions and their journal entries. And when I go to the trial balance and update it, I can see the changes reflected here. I can also look at the individual accounts for, let's say, accounts receivable account, the sales tax account, and even the sales income account. You can send the invoice as an email to the customer directly through Xero and even add payment links, which is a very good option if you want to do that. Having a payment link directly on the invoice enables customers to pay you as fast as possible. What you actually want to do is go back to the invoice and select the add payment option. Then enter in the payment details, the amount that was paid, the date of the payment, the account that the money was deposited into, and then add that payment. You'll then be able to view the invoice and it will be marked as paid. And then you can go back and look at all of the reports that we previously looked at, such as the trial balance, the journal report, as well as the individual sections, as well as the individual accounts in the company file. You can then go back to rest of the reports and verify the changes. After sending the invoice to the customer, you can actually receive the payment. You have two basic methods to receive the payment. You can directly receive the payment through the receive payment option, and you can use the invoice and then add a payment. You should never accept and receive payment from the receive payment option because it does not actually match the payment to the invoice that you send to the customer. So the invoice will still be due and that due amount will show up on the customer statement and it will show up in the accounts receivable account as well. But if you go to the invoice and then add a payment and mark the invoice as paid, the due amount will be reduced and the customer balance will also reduce. All of those changes will be reflected in the appropriate account. So if the customer pays by a check and you decide to receive the check and deposit it on a later date, then generally you will use the undeposited funds account and then transfer that check into the bank account. However, in this case, I'm going to simply receive the payment directly in the checking account to make the process a little bit more simple. And if you want to know more about undeposited funds account and how they work in QuickBooks or Xero, then just comment down below and I'll create a video on it. To some people, chart of accounts just sounds like a very complicated term and a jargon that is out of this world. But quite simply stated and honestly speaking, it is just a list of all the accounts in your company files. So it's nothing complex. Accountants just like to use a fancy term to make it sound much more complex and complicated than it actually is. Lists are boring, charts sophisticated and exciting, and accountants want to be cool. Think of it as a household refrigerator. There's a section for fruits and veggies, one for soda, one for beer, one for poultry, one for bread. You buy something, you store it in the right place to avoid a mess. Chart of accounts work the same. They help accountants organize transactions in a way that reduces mess. Whenever in doubt about categorizing a transaction, bookkeepers and accountants often refer to the chart of accounts to find the appropriate account. If no account exists for the particular transaction, then they create a new account. Here we have a tabular representation of chart of accounts. The account code, useful but not necessary, though highly recommended for proper organization of data. They are good to have and not need than to need and not have. The larger the business, the more the requirement for account codes. If we continue with the same analogy, then everything in the freezing section gets a code starting with 1, in the mid section with 2, and in the basket with 3. Account name is the name of the account. And what's in a name? A lot actually. You don't want your accountant to pull his or her hair out while trying to find a particular account. Let's say you have two business checking accounts, one with HSBC and the other with Bank of America. You can differentiate between the two accounts using the account name. Just below the account name, the description describes the account in more detail. If you have, let's say again, two checking accounts, one for daily transactions, the other for payment to employees, then you can describe each of the accounts in more detail using the description. This lets you clearly state the purpose of the account, providing more context to your tax consultants and your accountants. That's our whole deep dive on Xero. And if you want to learn more about Xero or migrating from QuickBooks to Xero or Xero to QuickBooks, then watch this video over here. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.